Today we're going to be talking about Palantir's valuation as we close out the year. Nearing the end of 2024, Palantir has absolutely dominated in the public markets, far surpassing $100 billion, as we all know. And, beginning of the year, the stock was at $15, and it's crazy to say. My bull case was the stock was going to double, but as you've seen, it's just been on an incredible trajectory really ever since it broke out past $20. It maintained that, and then it's crazy because in August it was $20. Like, it literally hit $20 when there was a market downturn, and it's just been an explosion ever since, driven in much part by the fundamentals as well as multiple expansion. And what I want to do in this video is, I haven't looked at any of this yet, but what I want to do is go through this with you in this video. We're going to look at all of the different valuation metrics for Palantir and how it compares to them historically to see, in my head, like, you obviously have to think a stock goes from $15 to $70 in 1 year. They're probably overvalued. But I want to see, maybe is the opposite actually true? So we're going to look through this together and explore. I just have the price to earnings ratio last 12 months. By the way, this is FactSet, a great professional tool, all things finance. So we'll be using this very high quality data. So we see, Palantir fairly recently profitable, and therefore we don't have as much data in the lifetime of the company, but it's never a very good idea to look back on the last 12 months for a price to earnings ratio when you're talking about a growth company. So I'm pretty much going to ignore this. So let's take a look instead at a price to earnings ratio for the next 12 months. Again, this is my first time seeing this. I want to put it on the 5-year mark. And so if we compress this a little bit, we can see Palantir essentially went public in 2020 at around 100 times their earnings, and this is adjusted. So then they spiked all the way up to 300 and then collapsed. So this is obviously, in hindsight, a fantastic place to be buying Palantir, which is when they still had growth, but the market was really, valuing them at 33 times. What is that? Who trades for 33 times? Costco trades for 60 times. How come Palantir was trading for 30 times? I don't know. But anyway, the point of this video is to compare. What we're currently seeing is Palantir's trading at 160 times their next 12 months earnings. Again, not a fantastic way to look at things, because in an industry that has such great tailwinds, again, next 12 months is still a little limiting, but it's better than looking backwards nonetheless. And so you see, this is by no means the highest that Palantir has traded in terms of its next 12 months price to earnings ratio. It's almost been twice as high. So obviously it's come up a lot. When we look at where it was a few months ago, it's more than doubled, obviously, with the stock, as we know. But it's just good to see that reference point, that when Palantir is at an all-time high by almost double right now, that it's still far below where it was in peak euphoria of 2020, or even into the beginning of 2021. So let's have a look to price to earnings growth as well. So what this does is I don't want both of those. Let's just look at one. So what this does is it takes the price to earnings ratio for the next 12 months and divides it by the growth that the company is seeing. So what we see here is, a similar story, but again, it used to trade for a lot more and then fell off a cliff, and that was sort of when the stock was collapsing. And then we had this consolidation around 1 times, which is a fantastic 1 times. Your price to earnings growth is a fantastic, truly an incredible place to buy a growth company if you know it's going to be successful. And then the explosion beginning of the year when the stock broke out, a little bit around 3 times. Now we're at 4 times, which is a little overheated, I must say. Usually you'll see probably no more than 3 times for a growth company. But what you have to consider with something like this is the growth. The higher the growth, the lower this goes, which means you're obviously getting a better deal for the stock. So if you think Palantir is going to actually grow into its valuation pretty significantly, which is a part of the bull thesis, then It might not look too outlandish, but this does show, some pause that you would want to have. Over 4 times is a little excessive. So now let's have a look at an interesting one, which would be price to cash flow. So we don't want to look at the book value. What we can see here is cash flow is obviously an incredibly important metric for a software company like Palantir, which is where it's getting all of its valuation from, is its ability to generate free cash flow. Yeah, we see this tremendous spike when Palantir initially went public, and we can kind of ignore that. So I'm actually just going to get that off because it's very much an outlier and not really at all where the company should be valued. So let me bring this a little more into frame here. And we're going to see, as with all of these, following the stock, but it's overlaid with the fundamentals, which is what's nice about these valuation. End of 2021, we were seeing the stock at around 70 times. It looks like about 60, 70 times cash flow, and then as low as 40 times. And so this is, you could think of it in a similar way to price to earnings. And then, pretty reasonable range of 35 to 70. Palantir is a very volatile stock, and now up to 121 times cash flow, which is a lot again, but Palantir is going to grow into this. It's a little bit above the previous high from middle of 2021, but not too significantly. And so I expect this multiple to come down over time, and I think 2025 is going to be a year where Palantir really grows into its valuation a good amount. So we can also look at price to sales, which is interesting. Let me get it for the lifetime of the company. Obviously, the value of the company divided into its sales, and the sales have obviously been increasing, but so has the valuation. And so, this basically mirrors the actual stock chart for Palantir. As low as 15 times sales, as high in the first peak of 40 times, and now roughly 48 times. So not too far above the previous peak, but pretty similar to the stock chart that we're seeing. And so definitely you're paying a lot when you're comparing it to sales. You're paying 48 times, which, usually tech companies would be far less than 20. That's another metric that looks a little high, but again, I think if you look at it a year from now, it's going to be much lower. And then if you want to give Palantir the benefit of all of its cash, you can actually do the enterprise value to sales, which shows things a little better because they have so much cash, which plays into the calculation of enterprise value. So if you want to look at it that way, we can also look at the enterprise value to EBITDA ratio. So this is a good one to look at. It's giving us a good comparison to Palantir's previous peak after it went public. So it actually went public at 86 times EV to EBITDA, and peaked at over 200. Again, a crazy, you would never really want to be buying something up there, let alone, 200 or even just below. But now we can see that Palantir is actually just trading at roughly where it was in 2021. Again, a lot of exuberance in the equity markets, but this was pre-AI and pre-everything that's driven Palantir significantly higher. So just interesting to note, although it was as low as 50, right around, I'm looking at the wrong thing. It was as low as 20 times or so. So another interesting one to sort of wrap your head around. And they're not paying a dividend on us, obviously, so we're not going to see that. But basically that brings me to the conclusion here of this video. And what I'm thinking is let's just have a look at the market cap, which is always interesting to see. We can put it in a 5-year. Let's put it in a 5-year view. And we could see this is where Palantir peaked in 2021. Collapsed and has now ripped higher. So when you look at it from a market cap basis, Palantir is significantly higher than it once was because of the dilution from extra shares makes the market cap higher and dilutes shareholders. The previous all-time high was 63 billion, and now it's 168 billion. So that's almost a 3 times higher market cap, despite the stock not being 3 times higher. So super interesting. I'd love to know what all of you think. I think Palantir is going to have an incredible 2025, and really grow into this valuation. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Until next time.